Well, thanks everyone. I don't think it comes as a surprise to any of you that the union movement has a strong interest in work health and safety and workers' compensation matters. They're two sides of the one coin, and we have been an active participant in the Comcare experience since its establishment in the 1980s. And as a public sector scheme, and of course our interest only broadened when the scheme took over or became involved in the private sector in the mid-2000s, or I should say around 2005. We are, as Justin pointed out, we're three representatives on the Safety, Rehabilitation and Compensation Commission, where we represent the interests of workers, both in terms of the WHS regulatory regime and the Workers' Compensation Insurance Scheme. We forever lobbying ministers and shadow ministers and about Comcare. We make written and verbal submissions around bills introduced into the Parliament. We lobby for particular legislative changes in respect to Comcare, and as we do in relation to the state and territory OHS regulatory frameworks and workers' compensation schemes. I'd just be a little interested to know who I'm talking to today to sort of gauge where your interest lies. Health and safety reps, have we got any health and safety reps here? You might put up your hand. Two? Yep. Who's got an interest in workers' compensation? A few more hands. Who works for Comcare? Quite a few. Okay, so we sort of guessed that the emphasis would be on workers' compensation. So Melissa Payne is one of the people from the CPSU, is one of the people that I rely on for day to day for advice about how the scheme operates, because she's an expert in the field. She's been involved for many years, and she deals with people directly, injured workers directly. So she's got a hands-on appreciation, which I don't quite have at the policy level. I might have done in my earlier days, to which Justin referred. I should make mention of Justin. He invited the ACTU to participate in a range of consultative forums that we held in each of the capital cities last year and this year. It was a really good program. So we don't rely on solely rely on the Comcare National Conference for feedback. Comcare were good enough through Justin's support to sponsor meetings in each of the capitals where we got to talk to people firsthand about their experience with Comcare on the basis that we have a shared objective about improving the performance of the scheme. So I pay tribute to you, your initiative in that regard. So I've dragged poor Melissa in to help me out. I do appreciate it because I've got a sort of family matter I do need to attend to. So I'm going to hand over to her, and I look forward to speaking with her after today's event to hear about the conversation that goes on today. Thanks.
Firstly, hello everyone, and I would love to have, a bit more of an open discussion with the group, so I'm hoping that we can have lots of questions that I can answer so that I'm able to meet everyone's needs. I first would like to just start out by saying that, I didn't necessarily know that I was going to be presenting today. I wasn't dressed for it, or did I have any makeup or my hair done, which is really bad. But as a female, I was like going, oh my goodness, I'm not only going to be judged because I work for a union, I'm also going to be judged by my hair and my makeup. And so I feel a little bit kind of, So I'm just putting that out there that, I am open to these things. I just wanted to, say that Why do I work for a union? So I've worked for CPSU now for 15 years. When I first started at CPSU, I started because I wanted to make a difference and to help people. I wanted to help people achieve the best possible outcomes so that they're able to continue to be in the workplace and be meaningful work, fully participating, and so that that business, company, organisation or department is succeeding. It's in our interest for those departments to succeed. We want departments, agencies and businesses to succeed. And so by succeeding, it means that we need to have workers who feel supported, recognised and able to pursue these matters. It's many times now that many workers, and when I say workers, I don't just mean all levels of workers, whether it be supervisors, managers, actual employees who are doing their duties, many don't feel that they have a voice. They don't feel comfortable to raise issues directly one-on-one because they feel threatened that their employment is at risk, whether that be through insecure work or whatever it may be. And so the union does play a key role in uniting workers, in uniting and bringing together those members to raise issues with management. So when I think about my role, I don't necessarily think about my role as someone who goes in and bangs my fist on the table and says, you must give me what I want. I see it as an opportunity for everyone to come together to raise the issues that matter and to put in place strategies and different systems of ways that we can work together, and so that everyone has that voice. So I guess I'm happy to talk about frontline issues and, if we want to pick my brain about what I think the scheme should look like and best practice, straight away, provisional liability. Straight away, we should have provisional liability. We should have access to early medical treatment. By having access to early medical treatment and provisional liability means that that injured worker is able to access the services and assistance they need at the earliest possible time so that they're more likely to be able to return to work in the future. The longer that these matters go on, in my experience, the longer that they go on places extra issues for that worker to actually return to some form of meaningful or good work, because it becomes more and more stressful for them. They become isolated, they're at home, they're not necessarily seeking medical treatment because they don't have the funds or the means to access those services, and they're not being provided with suitable alternative duties. And so these are sometimes some of the issues that the longer these systems go on, the more that someone starts to become isolated. They're not doing the things they enjoy doing. They're not socialising. They don't have the funds to go to a movie once a fortnight or to go and have breakfast with their best friend or whatever it may be. And then the more that you're isolated, the more that you're dwelling on these matters, which all play a role. So I'm happy to talk about things that in terms of early interventions, best strategies, but I guess I'm going to open it up to the floor in terms of straight off, is there things that you'd like to know? Is there a myth about the union movement that you're going, you all come in and you just demand all these things, or whatever it may be, so that we can go through those issues? So, burning questions. Surely someone has to have some question.
I've got a microphone. Does that help?
Yeah.
Is that I think the unions have become a bit more, I use this term loosely, but sophisticated in more the Greg Combay kind of model. That there's given that's a difficult environment, economic environment, and that whilst sometimes our experiences might have been that it's more been we're here for each individual member. There's actually a collective membership base that the greater good. So understanding that there are rationalisations in workforces, there are redundancies, businesses need to continue to operate, otherwise there's no jobs for any members.
Correct.
So I think in my experience, I've actually seen that as an evolution, and even more recently. I mean, I know Greg Combay with Patrick and stuff, we're going back 20 years now, but I'd say in the last 5 years, we've certainly seen that, and that's my experience, I think, in a Commonwealth scheme as well as a number of state-based jurisdictions that we play in. So I'd be interested to see if you think that's that's reflective of your own view of the union movement and the representation of the members?
Yes, 100%. So I think that we have continued to progress and advance in the work that we do, and whether that be in committees with management working on policies and best practice guides, whether it be working with Comcare, and also in terms of just how we go about approaching those individual matters as well, that where we're able to resolve them at the lowest possible level, whilst also being able to identify if there is a collective element to that we could potentially build campaigns around. And those campaigns are actually about making safe workplaces, by having safe workplaces that people feel comfortable, confident to go to work, do their duties and go home and still be alive at the end of the day. So these are things that will continue to progress. And I see a future where in 5 years' time, for example, I'm hoping that whilst we continue to build relationships with management, with departments, with the government, and whilst we're pursuing the issues that matter to members, that those things will continue to progress over time, and we won't be necessarily left behind or go, oh, that's the lady from the union, let's avoid her. And actually that we're coming together, because like I've said, why I started this job originally was about uniting everyone, giving everyone a voice, that we can come together, and by doing so we can actually achieve great things for everyone, including business.
Any other questions? There's one at the back. I'll bring the mic down.
What does the union identify as the priorities for change? Like you talk about lobbying the ministers and lobbying for it. What are your top 5?
Top 5, provisional liability. Sorry, I'm going to say that a lot of times, just because I genuinely believe in that. So provisional liability, access to early medical treatment and those expenses that are critical to someone's recovery. Stronger work health and safety rights for work health and safety representatives in being able to identify hazards, issues, and being able to, whether it's bring the regulator in or working with management to resolve those issues. A system that doesn't drag on forever and a day. So for those who may know something about the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, so for a claim that's going through, you can be in a system where you could be waiting a year before you have a final decision. And so for some individuals going through those processes, it's all fine and well, so whether it be a physical injury, but when you're in a system that is going for such an extended period of time and you're not in the workplace and you're still waiting on a claim and you don't have any funds, you can then essentially establish secondary illnesses such as psychological, mental health injuries, which I would say a contributing factor to some of those secondary issues is due to the system in and of itself. That's 4. And my 5th is just continuing to have relationships across different areas. So whether it be your self-insurer, whether it be case managers, rehab providers, the members and management, by continuing to have proactive, productive relationships does play a significant role for all of us. It's not just in my interests, it's in everyone's interests.
Thanks, Melissa. Next one.
Just a question on the early intervention. All the research indicates that getting that medical treatment as soon as possible after an injury is the best way to go. Yeah. Who do you think should be providing, or is best placed to be providing that treatment, and if that treatment's not and the access to that treatment being the significance of that immediately following an injury?
Early intervention I find fascinating, and we may even find it in this room right now. When I ask people, what does early intervention mean? Many people say many different things. So, for example, some will say it's access to medical treatment. Some will say it's about having policies and procedures and communication and discussions. But then there's also questions about suitable alternative duties or hours and all of those things. I believe that obviously through early intervention is when someone's coming to their manager or supervisor, or they've lodged an incident report or whatever it may be, that there's actually a conversation. there's a conversation with that person, which is a supportive conversation about how the organisation can provide that person with support and assistance moving forward. And I don't think that when we limit it just to we will only provide A, B or C, for example, that we're necessarily catering to all of those individuals. We need to be open to what works for someone, for me, may not work for someone else. And so sometimes you hear a lot of times where supervisors haven't necessarily had to have that conversation. Or if we're talking about mental health, they're a little bit scared to have that conversation because they feel that it may be worse. But I would say access to medical treatment is critical, and that should be guided by obviously the medical professionals, in the sense of this person should be having, and I'm making this up, but sorry, whether it's that they should be attending physio appointment once a week for the next 6 weeks, whether it should be that they need to speak with a counsellor, a psychiatrist, psychologist for the next 5 weeks, whatever it may be, that those things are actually facilitated. Because by facilitating those things will actually hopefully achieve that person being able to return to work and or continue to come to work whilst going through that process. Have I?
Do you want, hang on.
And just then, in terms of the doctors, treating doctors, company doctors, if you want to call them that, what's your view on that one?
Personal doctor. Personal doctor. And I think that so fitness for duties or sending someone to a doctor. And again, so I'm generalising. I understand that there's a time and a place to do that. Is that the time and the place to do when we're talking about early intervention? We're talking about sending someone off who's raising the issue, that whatever that issue may be, with management in an attempt to, get help, get assistance, continue to work, or return to work sooner. By sending someone off to a doctor generally creates extra stress for that person, in the sense of that doctor doesn't know me, they don't know my history, they're only going to speak with me for 1 hour. How can this doctor form a view on what I need for an hour? Plus, I would say it's a lot of money that companies are spending at an early intervention stage. Why wouldn't we just be engaging with their doctor who is actually going to be working with their patient over a period of time to get them into better health?
I think that comes around the knowledge piece about the actual workplace as well. So there's an opportunity that the treating doctor is open to being advised about what the work site is. I mean, so many, in my experience in 20 plus years, so many doctors just tick a box totally unfit because they don't understand and say, well, I don't think you do your pre-injury duties, but they don't actually understand that there might be 300 other things that person can do in the workforce, and then you might lose 3 or 6 months before you get the opportunity. So I can see from my clients have got what you call the company doctor or the large group who's actually done worksite assessments, done videos, understands the job analysis. So there's perhaps that sharing of the information at the early stage.
Definitely. And again, I'm going to come back to that. When we all work together, we can achieve great things, which is that part of actually providing that injured worker or that person with information. Information provides them with the opportunities and the considerations to make informed decisions. If they don't know that suitable alternative duties could be provided, or a reduction in hours, or that they can access these services, if that person doesn't know that those things are available, then it's potentially going to go downhill because they don't have access and all the support that they need to raise these issues and pursue them. And most people don't believe they'll ever be injured at work. Most people care passionately about it and they believe that there should be a fair system, but they believe that won't happen to me, that'll happen to the person next door. And so it's not something that people have an in-depth knowledge about, other than potentially the people in these rooms. And it's not until you're in the system that you then are in a system where there is that much information, some of it's not clear, you don't necessarily know where to go to help, and sometimes those workers don't feel they have a voice to raise those issues. And it's about all of us coming together to be able to go, these are the issues and how do we actually help this person? Let's not just let them sit at home. Yes, they can do some form of meaningful work. What does that work actually look like? let's create some plans, let's help them, let's get them some treatment that they need, which is in everyone's interests, rather than staying at home, and then rather than it becoming a small issue, it becomes a big one. And they then end up staying on the system and receiving incapacity payments for a very long time with limited prospects of returning. If we dealt with it straight away, that should hopefully turn those things around. And there'll always be a percentage where, you know, there might be a percentage where you go, that's the process they're going down, but that's really small. Most people want to be at work. It's a part of their identity. Going to work, contributing to something, being a part of something, having something to get up for every day is a big part of this. And those are those parts where if we come together, we can achieve those things.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're watching on the streaming on the internet from somewhere in this country, you can send a question through as well, and we'll read that out and we'll get that responded to. Are there any others from within the room? Can I ask one?
Yeah.
So injury rates, illness rates have been coming down over a number of years.
Yes.
Can you sort of reflect on what you've seen in workplaces that might have contributed to that? So some positives that you've seen over your 15 or so years in the union movement?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start off with a few things. There is a lot more talk now than what there has ever been in relation to early intervention and or how do we assist the benefits of good work, collaborative partnerships. There is, you know, and mental health feels like, you know, it is very much something that most people want to be a part of to make a difference. This is not the case from when I first started. People weren't necessarily talking about these things. An injured worker was potentially seen as someone who's trying to rort the system, or, oh, they've got lots of issues and let's just push them in the corner and leave them alone. So I think that a lot of people have played a significant role in shifting those, and whether it be shifting it in the way of creating policies and procedures and or changes to legislation, specifically picking up on how do we actually assist these people through these processes and moving it. So I think that's been a big shift. I think that also we get invited, so unions are invited to the table a lot more than what we have potentially been in the past about, you know, what are some of the things that we can create or put into these policies to make it better, given that we are speaking with these workers every day. So we have the information, the knowledge about the sorts of issues that they're facing that some managers do also have, or rehab case managers, insurers will have, but it is things that we're dealing with every single day. So we're hearing those issues. We play a significant role in that also, that how do we actually help this person get to work? So part of the process we have is about making sure that they're in contact with the appropriate treating practitioners as well. So if they don't already have doctors, we provide them with some details about who are the people that they should or could be reaching out to for support and assistance in those conditions. What is the role of Comcare? What's the process? How do I lodge a claim? Or who are the people within the department or agency I need to be speaking with? So these are things that have continued to evolve over time, which I do believe is making a difference. And obviously premiums within Comcare have come down, and I know that they believe that continue to come down. And whilst we are continuing to look at best practice measures, and or different things that we can do, and involving all of the stakeholders and relevant people to form those groups to pursue them, one would hope that these issues will continue to decrease and that appropriate mechanisms are put in place to address and deal with them as soon as possible.
I'll ask another one if I can. HSRs and health and safety committees in organisations, any observations on best practice in that space?
More.
Okay.
More. With stronger rights, stronger powers. So again, HSRs play a critical role in ensuring that workplaces are safe. Why on earth wouldn't we want as many of them as we can possibly have? By having as many HSRs who are trained, experienced, able to identify hazards or issues that keep everyone who's coming to work safe. Why wouldn't we do so? So I would say we want more HSRs. I would say that there should be support for HSRs, whether that be through unions, whether that be through the regulators, whether that be through management, all of the above. And so that when there are issues, they shouldn't be, what's the word, swept, covered up, pushed to the side, I don't know, or not treated seriously. They should actually be going, okay, if there's a hazard, what's the hazard? And what can we actually do to address that? What are the things that we can do to reduce those hazards so that workers can continue to come to work and be safe whilst at work, rather than leaving that HSR out there alone to by themselves. We have HSRs in the room, so I think there was 3 who put their hand up, so if they wanted to say something on their personal view, but they don't have to. But I would say that we should be supporting HSRs. The regulator should be getting more involved with HSRs and taking the issues that HSRs are raising seriously. They're not raising the issues to create a problem or a fight when there doesn't need to be. They're raising those issues because there's a hazard, which is putting people's safety or lives at danger. And so they're raising those issues to fix those issues.
They can and do, I should say. So, but there's Comcare is a WHS helpline, so we do receive any of those notifications that come through. So, just to put that on the record while I'm here.
And as Michael said, we do welcome that. You know, obviously the roadshow that you did, it is a good step in us coming together. When was the last time that a roadshow happened?
Before my time.
So my point is that these are the sorts of issues that when we're working through these things and we're coming together, we're hearing what the issues are that you're facing. You're hearing the issues that we're facing. We're hearing the issues that management are raising or facing. When we're all coming together and we're actively looking at those things, plays a role in reducing the premiums, which is playing a role in what's happening right now.
Okay, there's a review of the WHS Act underway at the moment.
Yes.
Have you got any observations on the Act? Anything that you think's working well, or perhaps anything that you'd like to see changed? I can't implement this, of course, it's a safe work thing, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Michael probably would have been better, but
Yeah.
and he would have listed, I'm sure, many things. But again, I would say there should be lots more HSRs. There should be access to training of their choice in terms of how they're learning and doing those things, and that there should be clear, I guess, guidelines in how to pursue and or implement PINs and what those processes may be, which actually are about being proactive in coming together rather than yes or no, so to speak. So I think that more powers to HSRs, which is all about ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone who's coming to work, and access to appropriate training of their choice, and appropriate PIN and pursuing mechanisms. So I know that you have the advice line, which is great, but sometimes it may be that they're not necessarily provided with advice, because that may actually then put parties at conflict rather than, again, coming together in how we can actually pursue it. Does that make sense?
That's good, thank you, because I did put you on the spot. So
That's okay.
another, I'll keep going just to keep the ball rolling, as it were. The dialogue around safety in workplaces, you might have touched on this, but you might want to expand on it. Have you got a sense over recent years that that's becoming more kind of normalised to have that conversation with or without workers, but the organisations that you deal with, do you think there's the safety message is becoming more prominent and is being addressed in a kind of more active fashion than it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Yes and no. I think that they have access to a lot more information, which access to information can be both a great thing and also the devil at times. because access to too much over information which provides contradictory information creates issues at times. I think that management don't necessarily consult with HSRs on matters, or we may be called in as a HSR to a working group which talks about a whole range of things but not necessarily the issues that the HSR wish to raise. Having access to HSRs, having access to members or workers as well can sometimes be an issue. So I think that in terms of your specific question, which is has it improved and those sorts of...
It's the safety culture is where I think I'm
Yeah.
trying to go with this.
So I think that the identification of those hazards is continuing to increase, but I believe there's still a long way to go when we're talking about HSRs and the role that they play in the workplace in identifying hazards, pursuing hazards and having those hazards resolved.
Okay, thank you. Any more from the floor? Any online? No one?
I guess I have you all worked with unions? Hands up. Yeah. And when you've engaged with unions, have they been on collective policy issues versus individual issues? So has it been collective issues, policies? Sorry?
Depended on the union.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yep. And in terms of individual matters, when the union's coming in and dealing with management or the rehab or the case manager, have you found that a positive engagement? Yes or no? Yes, hands up for yes.
Same answer.
Same, yeah. Yeah.
Can I give you a microphone?
I want to preface this by saying I'm not from Victoria, and I was looking at a newspaper this morning while I was waiting to come to this conference, and I read an article, and it concerned me greatly. It was all about there's a new road that's being built here somewhere in Melbourne, and they announced that in my previous life I've worked in the civil construction industry, so I know how much a plant operator earns and all those sort of things, and I believe in a reasonable rate of pay for a day's work. According to this article, people working on this project were going to earn an average of $150,000 a year. That seems to be extraordinary. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, what's your view on that?
So I need to say I'm also not from Victoria. So I'm from New South Wales, so I'm not aware of this issue. So is your question though specifically about what's my view on them earning $150,000 a year?
My question really relates, I suppose, to the bad old days of union.
Sorry, I missed that.
My question really relates to are we returning to the bad old days of unionism? $150,000 a year is a lot of money, taxpayers' money. Is that an appropriate rate of pay to pay someone in that industry, in that particular project? It was $8.90 per hour site rate.
I feel really unequipped to answer this, and more so because the area of coverage that I specifically look after is the Commonwealth, so the government. So I don't necessarily know the individuals that are doing this work and all. Yeah, so I feel a bit underprepared to answer that. So I would say that obviously people should be remunerated appropriately based on the level of skill and knowledge that they're bringing to the job that they're doing. And so whether it be that they're project managers or whatever it may be, then you kind of go, that sounds fair and reasonable pay. Whether they're a construction person who's putting in the cement, I don't know. I'm not sure about the appropriate rates of pay for those workers.
We're probably moving a bit outside
Yeah, so I feel
workers'
a bit
comp
like,
and work health
I'm
safety,
not sure
but
I can answer
nevertheless,
that. There's a question up the back.
is there? We're up there. Bear with me.
Hi, you talked a little bit about some of the priorities for legislative change in workers' compensation. In the absence of that, what sort of things do you think that claims management organisations, whether that be Comcare or third-party claims managers, can do to improve the experience for injured workers?
Yeah. So I think that this is something that's come a long way as well. And we have started meeting with a number of insurers as well throughout different networks and groups in terms of best practice models. Again, I'm going to come back to that. Contact as soon as possible is really critical. So if someone lodges a claim, then they're obviously identifying that they've been diagnosed with a medical condition. And so having contact within 24 hours to say, you know, thanks, we've received your claim. Is everything kind of there, ticking that box? Do you need any support from us? This is the process going forward, I think is really beneficial. Provisional liability, I'm going to just keep saying provisional liability all the time, but access to early information, appointing and putting people in contact with each other. So, for example, sometimes an injured worker may not necessarily notify their employer, they may go straight to the insurer. Or it might go directly to the agency or the department they work for, who then need to forward it off to whoever that insurer may be. Anything that we can do to reduce the timeframes, anything we can do to reduce the timeframes in the process for how long it takes to make a claim should be done. So I'm advocating for more workers in all of the insurers and in Comcare who are making decisions on these claims, because the sooner a decision is made, the better it is for all parties. So access to information, contact with that injured worker, and decisions made as quickly as possible. If we talk about outside of, so in terms of claims management, they're kind of my three. Outside of claims management, prevention. Prevention is obviously the best thing because it means that there hasn't even been an injury or an illness to begin with. So coming up with best practice guides as to how work is to be undertaken, or know your rights fact sheets, or information, whether it be online modules, training programs, implementing wellness initiatives, access to a gym, access to yoga, the sit-stand desks, all of those things, depending on the nature of the work that the person does. So prevention is obviously a critical part of this, because the more that we're putting in place, which is about managing and preventing those issues, plays a significant role.
Thank you. Another question up the front.
So the elephant in the room is wondering why you don't get invited to the road shows. I mean, something surely would be a focus for the unions to understand why. But also from a health and safety perspective, I'm wondering why the unions don't take that preventative approach and get involved with the risk management side of running a project.
Yes.
So you understand the project, the risks that the activities present to the workers,
Yes.
and then most importantly, as a collective team, you have an understanding of the controls in place to protect the workers.
Yes.
I really don't see that approach being taken by unions in all of my working career. It's always reactive.
Yes.
A death occurs, there's an uproar.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're seeing in Comcare with the inspectors reaching out to regions, engaging with people from a proactive approach to workplace safety as opposed to a regulated approach, I think is the way to go for the future for everyone if you really want to work collaborative, that word.
Collaborative.
Tongue-tied, but long day.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do, and I agree. I agree with you. In terms of why we're not invited to the roadshows beforehand, I guess that's a question for Justin rather than me. But what I would say is that by having invitations to those roadshows and being able to come together is playing a significant role. In terms of obviously the risk assessments and those sorts of things, it is something that we continue to try to be as active as we possibly can. I guess it comes down to many things in terms of whether it be that the union has the resources in those areas and all the organisers in those areas, what are those key priorities, and then actually having a seat at the table with management to actually be able to identify the risks and put in place plans. We are advocating for us to all come together to be able to identify all of those sorts of issues, put in place strategies so that we're actually playing a role in prevention. But it comes down to people in this room coming together and resolving these issues. So I would say that this isn't something we're doing perfect from a union perspective. It's not perfect. Is there still work for the union movement to do in this space? Yes, there is. The union movement welcomes ongoing communication with insurers, departments, businesses, companies in identifying risks in doing those assessments and putting forward strategies and recommendations to either reduce or annihilate those risks, that they're not there anymore. But there has to be a willingness of all parties coming together to achieve that. And we want that. We're up for that. We want to be engaging. And they have to also allow us access to the HSRs. That's the other part of this, which is organisers want to be able to come in and work with HSRs to pursue those issues, and in some cases we get blocked. And we want to smash that open. We want to be involved.
Okay, we're out of time. So, yes, well done. Just join with me. Thank Melissa. She stepped in.
Thank you.
You stepped in with really short notice, so we do appreciate you making your time available and answering those questions, and I found them particularly valuable and useful. And again, yeah, well done to you, and I'll give you Michael's gift. That's what I'll do for you, Melissa. So thanks, everyone.
Can I just finish with one last point? Now that we've had this presentation, are you going to go back to whatever your jobs may be and go, let's work with the union? Hands up.
Lots of hands up if you can't see that from where you are around Australia. Okay, thanks again.